everyone. Welcome back to the SBK Betting Podcast. Another week of racing in store as we look ahead to a very busy festive period and a bit of relief from the team after last weekend. Ross Millar and James Millman joining me. We had a frustrating weekend at Cheltenham, and also for Ross's Cocorico, who had a funny old race, Ross, but we got there in the end. Seeing Martello Sky, a winning nap for Ross at 6-1 at Cheltenham, the final race of the day, and also winning selection for James. And it was added to with a couple of each way, hitting the crossbars in the shape of Midnight Shadow, who came in at 10-1, and Zanza, who ran a funny race, was 12-1 second in the Racing Post Gold Cup. So a slightly frustrating weekend last weekend, but we got there in the end. We keep on delivering those winning selections, and while the country goes into an Omicron spin with Christmas plans on a bit of a tenterhook, at least we have racing to keep us busy. And Ross Millar, you are safe in your French chateau with another lovely dashing polar neck, and that's all that matters.
Don't want to disappoint, Jess. Let's keep going.
We're going to start with the 150, the Howden Handicap Chase on Saturday, over 2 mile, 3 furlongs. Current prices with SBK, Palmer's Hill coming into this off the back of a good win is 4-1. Night in Dubai, 6s along with Guy. Diego de Charmil, 13-2 with Financier. Sully Dock, 7-1. Zugili, 12s. Dolos, 13s. And it's bigger, the rest. Overall look at this race, I thought there could be some well-handicapped horses here, getting weight of some really inconsistent types like the likes of Dolos and Sully Dock, just struggling off their current marks. I'll come to you, Ross. How did you look at this race? Because I thought this was particularly tricky.
Yeah, I did. I definitely thought that. I certainly felt fairly quickly I wanted to be against the top two, Palmer's Hill and Guy. Palmer's Hill was a nice winner at Wetherby last time, and in the first half of the race, his jumping was impeccable. But as the tempo quickened, he was a little bit scrappy at a number of fences, and it ended up being a closer result than it perhaps should have been. And I just think there's no doubt that Ascot is a much tougher jumping test than Wetherby. I think if they get going a bit quick down the back, it is going to expose his jumping if it's not up to scratch. Wetherby was only his second chase start, so he is entitled to improving his jumping, but I think he'd need to. And so at a short price, I was prepared to take him on. And then Guy just doesn't win, does he? I mean, you can go back through his form and look at a race and think, yeah, next time up in trip, he'd go close, and he just seems to find an excuse not to win. I would slightly question his resolution, and the problem is all the time he's climbing in the handicap. So I got it down to 2. One of the ones actually you mentioned as being fairly exposed and a little bit inconsistent, Sully Dock. He's got winning course form back in October last year, beating Editor de Gite. So that form looks really good, but he is inconsistent. He then had a good third at the track in November this year. But then followed that up just a week later at Newbury, where he ran below par. You could maybe say, did that run come a bit too quick? But he's coming slowly down the weights, and I thought he was interesting on this goodish ground, which he should appreciate. He was a winner on good ground at the Punchestown Festival over 2 miles. But the one I think does look thoroughly unexposed is Night in Dubai from the Dan Skelton yard. He beat Shahalon Munro 6 easy lengths at Doncaster 2 years ago. That horse is now rated 138. He then perhaps followed that and not staying over 2 mile 3 in very heavy ground at Haydock, and then unseated at Cheltenham. He was then away for the track for 18 months and then came back at Aintree at the start of this season, finishing 5th. A mistake at the second last there probably took a bit of momentum out of him, and he plugged on. But he's now down to a really nice mark. The Dan Skelton yard are known for setting their sights on a target and going for it. He's entitled to improve for that first run back. And I thought 6-1, he's dropping down the weights, good ground. This intermediate trip, I thought, would see him to good effect. And at 6-1, I thought he was a solid bet.
Yeah, my only niggle with him, but I am agreeing with you, this is that, as you earlier said, you have to jump really well at Ascot. And I couldn't find a horse in here that I could 100% rely on, especially coming to those last 2 fences. James, as we both pointed out, horses in here that it's difficult to really over-assess their form. Palmer's Hill comes here off the back of a good win, but I just thought perhaps knowing this team, JP McManus, John Joe O'Neill, they probably have a plan that they're outlining for this horse to get to a race at Cheltenham or the likes. Winning this again and hiking up again might not be ideal. Is there something that you have found outside of the top of the market like Ross has?
Yeah, I have. I've taken a chance on one that was a little bit of a dodgy jumper last season. That's Financier for Kerry Lee and Richard Patrick. Now, this horse is Derby bred. He's flatbred through and through, a son of Dubai, out of a Rainbow Crest mare, related to loads of black type performers. Won a point, was picked up by the lead team for about £115,000. No show in bumpers, surprisingly, considering his pedigree, and then skipped hurdling completely and went chasing last season. 25-1 shock at Ludlow on his second start over fences. And then he ran well at Chepstow, second down in Moy off 135, and he bolted up at Hereford off 136, an £8 lower mark. He beat Hollywoodian by 10 lengths. That horse certainly hasn't done the form any harm. Finished third to Papa Tango Charlie, I think is a very progressive horse the other day at, I think it was Carlisle. And ultimately, all three wins have come at right-handed tracks, and it does seem to be he produces much better performances on a right-handed track. So if his jumping stands a test, which is a big if, because he did take a few liberties last season, I think Kerry Lee's horse is an interesting improver. And in a very open handicap, you've got the old boys that are perhaps on the downward spiral a little bit, but are well handicapped. Horse like Guy, as Ross says, £17 higher in his last win, and despite running well, he doesn't look like changing that. And the favourite, Palmer's Hill, obviously deserves to be favourite because he's got that lightly race profile, and they really backed him heavily in his chase debut last year, which was a disaster at Taunton. But give him a year off, and he was much better return defences at Wetherby last time.
So Financier for James, you can get that currently at SBK at 13-2. I'm with Ross siding with Night in Dubai. I think the Skelton team are probably plotting out with this horse how to get him back on the straight and narrow. He does need to jump, as do a lot of these horses, and he's currently 6-1 for the 150, the Howden Handicap Chase, which is the first race we've looked at. We're going to head on into the 225, which is the feature race at Ascot. It's the Grade 1, the Howden Long Walk Hurdle, over 3 mile, half a furlong. And Buzz is currently 2-1 favourite. Time Hill, who was just touched off in this race last year, 3-1. Ronald Pump, coming over from Ireland, is at 6's. Champ, the bit of the fly in the ointment, he's 8-1. Paisley Park, looking to win this for the third year in a row, is 10s. Thomas Darby, 11s. On the blind side, 19-1. Lisnagar Oscar, 29-1. Third Wind, 41-1. Must say, first of all, a great feel about this race, a really good look to it. It's a lot of strength and depth. It's probably the best of the British 3 mile division. Ronald Pump coming into this brings in that sort of extra element with his form tying in with Honeysuckle. So it's a true Grade 1, which we like to see. Obviously, we've been through a bit of a journey with Buzz from the Cesarewitch to the Coral Hurdle. And the question that everyone is either going one side or the other, Ross, is does he stay? And that's what we'll find out on Saturday. And your thinking, your thoughts?
Tin hat on. My thoughts are he clearly looks like he should stay in that, 2 mile 2 on the flat. You'd be hopeful that they'd stay 3 miles over hurdles. And I hope he does stay, because I think it's a weak division that's looking for a star, and he could be it. But I just can't quite get away from the fact that he travels so well for a stayer. And when you think of the really great stayers, Big Bucks as an example, they tend to travel slightly behind the bridle and conserve a little bit of energy. So at the price, and it purely was a price thing, 2-1, I'd want to be very confident backing at 2-1. The horse I'm backing is going to stay. I'm not quite there with Buzz, so I've looked elsewhere. But you have to say it's going to be a brilliant race. I mean, of the 9, even Third Wind, the outsider, is a Grade 2 winner of the Rendlesham last year. It's very hard, I thought, to discount anything. And they all have their questions to answer. Buzz, is he going to stay? Paisley Park, is he the horse he was? Champ, is he as effective over hurdles? Tyne Hill, can he put the French run behind him? So Paisley Park, I thought, was very interesting in that he certainly showed he had his zest for life back last time at Newbury, but they just got racing far too far out. was lit up with the cheek pieces. And I think Tom Bellamy maybe is an interesting booking. Aidan Coleman has done nothing wrong, but I think maybe a fresh set of eyes, a sort of no preconceived ideas about how the horse is going underneath you, could just see Paisley Park back to his best. And they have gone for a tongue tie to try and sort of negate the effect of this flat spot that he hits. If that works, then he's bang there. Champ, I think, is as talented as anything in the field. You know, stamina to win an RSA and the speed to win a game spirit, you'd have to say marks him out as a fairly smart sort. His jumping went to bits at Cheltenham Festival last year. He's had his back operation. And I think hurdles is perhaps going to help his back hold up to the rigors of the game, maybe. I've actually had a little bit of an anti-post bet on him for the Cheltenham Stayers hurdle, because I think if he runs well here, I think there's every chance they could keep him over hurdles. But he is a keen going sort, and I just wonder whether first time out he's going to over race. And that was the reason they gave last year for going for the game spirit. They didn't want to go over 3 miles with him because he could be a bit keen and maybe fall in a bit of a hole. Tyne Hill, the French run, okay, French racing is very different. But the worrying thing for me was he got outpaced going down the back, and they weren't going quick. It was a typical French race. You know, they tend to go fairly slow and then sprint up the straight. And he got outpaced before they were really kicking. That, for me, is a bit of a concern. The horse I came down on was On the Blind Side, who it isn't the most obvious, I admit, but I just thought he got racing a long way out at Newbury, along with Paisley Park. And he saw Paisley Park off by 8 lengths. He was only beaten 2 lengths by Thomas Darby. And at the weights, he came out the best horse. He's 8 points and 9 points bigger than Thomas Darby and Paisley Park. And I just thought that was too big. He's been in good form. He's had some good form at Ascot previously. And I just thought at 19-1 in a race where I would happily give a solid nod to most of them, I let the price dictate, and 19-1 On the Blind Side, I thought was a standout price, really.
19-1, he sure is currently with SBK. He is a horse that I'm most certain will go on and bowl along and set a good gallop, which will suit a lot of these horses. I think it will suit Buzz. I think it will be a big benefit to him that it's a truly run race. And perhaps the ground not as testing as it was last year, it won't be such a slog, which will be a benefit to a couple of these horses. It's fascinating to hear Ross's opinions on how it's going to develop. James, from where you're sitting, from how you've looked at it, are there points that you agree or disagree with?
Bad Ross. Bad Ross. And on the Buzz podcast, to not be putting him up, that's not good. He talks a lot of sense, though, and I think the point he makes about the price differential On the Blind Side and the horses he ran in against Newbury last time, I think that's valid. I agree about Tyne Hill in France. Not too sure what to make of that return. You can easily put a line through it, but again, it was so bad, and obviously we've not seen him since. Look, Buzz, he's stayed so well on the flat in Seattle 2 mile turn in Zarwich, where he outstayed Willie Mullins' horse Burning Victory under a determined Oisin Murphy. That suggests to me he will keep finding for pressure, and he's done that on his 2 goes at 2.5. Abracadabra, where he ran an absolute stormer, and I think in a stronger race at Aintree, I thought he saw it out to the line really well. And then our friend Song for Someone, who let us all down last week, he outbattled him, and God Your Honour, obviously go to form a nice boost, finishing 3rd. He went on to win at Cheltenham. So his form is working out well. Ross is spot on. The division's weak. You're making a cracking decision to go for the staying division because it's up for grabs. Paisley Park's been a credit to Em Lavelle and her team, but the star's been on the wane for a couple of seasons now, and despite the cheek pieces last time, he ran his race the wrong way around, but the end result was still very similar. So yeah, Bad Ross is probably right in the fact the price is skinny enough, but at 2-1, I think he is our most likely winner. Your main danger for me would be the Irish Raider, Ronald Pump, who he ran a cracker once again behind Honeysuckle last time. Strong form, his 3rd Classical Dream at Punchestown. We didn't see him in between Fairyhouse and Punchestown last year, so he's actually going to see more of him this time around. I just think he's a cracking horse for connections, and he's your main danger. But I think we're all team Buzz, apart from Ross.
Apart from Ross. That's fine. Ronald Pump has been attracting a good bit of support, and he's in 6-1 now after the declarations, and definitely deserves to be in this race and have a good chance of it. He's been a bit of a second, third horse in the past, just running into good horses. Must say, I think Buzz, yes, he does travel very strongly, but he can be quite lazy as well in parts in his races. And I don't think that's a bad thing when it comes to this. I think he travelled into the second final hurdle very, very strongly to show to us that he should be staying 3 miles. And that's confirmed by Nico, confirmed by James Bowen after the Aintree hurdle. Hence why we are here. So we will see how this develops on Saturday. But for James, it's Buzz at 2-1 and Ross on the blind side at 19-1. And I'm going to sit out of it if that's all right, but just for this time only. Right, we'll head on to the 3 o'clock, the Howden Silver Cup Handicap Chase. This race, which again has got some brilliant handicappers coming into this. The likes of Cloth Cap gives it a really nice feel to it, running over 3 miles this race. And we've got Bellamy picked on for the Venetia Williams team, who've been flowing out the winners, and that this horse's form has been franked after Snow Leopardess won the Beecher, backing up the Banger Victory, where this horse was fourth. That this horse is 4-1 currently. Grand Sancy is 13-2. And Sam Sevens with Cloth Cap and Regal Encore. Jerry's Backs at 8 with Caribbean Boy. Check it out. It's 10. Storm Control 15-1. Phoenix Way 15-1. Valtor 17s with Step Back. And Denon's completes it with 100-1. Unlike the earlier race, I'll come to you, James, to have your thoughts on this. Unlike the earlier handicap chase that we see, I thought that this had a little bit more quality. Yes, there's some horses slipping down the weights. I think Grand Sancy's on quite a nice mark now, but the likes of the JP Manners runners, Regal Encore, Jerry's Back, they've all got, serious form on their game, on their A day. But there are also some sort of likable horses that sort of are coming up the weights too.
Yeah, most definitely. And Venetia's Bellamida picked on is a horse who's had a lot of problems, a lot of absences. Back in November 2017, he was second to Waiting Patiently in the graduation. Colin Parker at Carlisle, he ran an absolute stormer, missed 18 months after that, and came back. He was fourth at Cheltenham, and I think it was the Paddy Power behind Happy Diva. And then he was disappointing a couple of times, missed another 18 months and ran a crack on his return at Bangor behind Snow Leopardess, who's done the form, no harm at all. He's definitely the best treated, probably off 135. The issue is he's 10 years old now. Can he actually get his head back in front again? So that's a slight question mark, but he probably deserves to be one of our market leaders. Cloth Cap, I thought he ran a cracker at Newbury and Ladbroke. The problem is he had a very hard race. He got very tired taking on Cloudy Glen from quite an early stage down the home straight, and he was very weary. I just worry 3 weeks since then, it may be too soon. So for me, I've taken a chance on a second dodgy jumper, which is probably not great at Ascot. But Anne Sam, I was impressed with him over hurdles this season. I thought he just didn't take a great cut at his hurdles under Isabel Williams last time. So the fact he only got beat 5 lengths, I think reads well. He took the fences nicely around Ludlow. His win beating Fidela Vallis looks good. He's £7 higher on the ratings, 134. Ignore Sandown back in March. And I think Evan Williams' team, he runs a lot of horses, but the ones that have a chance are tending to go close. So I think his Stringer still in pretty good form. And Adam Wedge back on board's got to be a positive. So Ansam out of Bathwick Annie, who was such a superstar for the owners, Bathwick Tyres, back in the day. Ansam could be another useful individual for Evan Williams. So 7-1 in a tight race, you wouldn't be going wrong going each way on Ansam.
Yeah, in the Cool Cody colours, who had that spectacular victory at Cheltenham last weekend. As you say, Adam Wedge is on board the Evan Williams team. This horse only 6, I couldn't believe it. And Evan Williams likes to do this with the horses, make most of their handicap marks and switch back and forward. So I think that's really interesting and coming into this off a mark of 134. But there's a big ask against some horses who are really confirmed staying chasers, who know how to jump and jump well, Ross. When you looked at this, for me, I love giving Cloth Cap another chance. Going down £4 is a bit of a gift, really, for a horse of this quality.
Yes, but you wonder whether they're going to want a bit more of a gift with an eye to a bigger target, perhaps in the spring. I took the view that they probably had designs on winning a second Ladbroke, and if that wasn't going to happen, then maybe his season would be geared around getting down to a sort of competitive mark to have another go at the national. I just thought the ground was crucial here, in that I agree entirely with James. Bellamy de Pictons is definitely potentially the best treated, but you just get the suspicion that this ground could be lively enough for him. Grand Sancy is a horse that I've never truly had an awful lot of time for. I think he has flattered to deceive on too many occasions. He is a pound lower, and it was a step in the right direction last time. And then Regal Encore, he probably is going to want softer ground. Jerry's back. I actually mentioned on the very first podcast, and he still carried most of that fence with him. And Sam, as James said, is potentially well treated, but his jumping going to have to pass the muster. Caribbean Boy is sort of in no man's land. So the one I came down on, slightly speculatively, is Valtor, who was with Nicky Henderson and had a peak mark of 160. He's now down to 138 and has moved to the Rowley team, who are doing very well in their first season training under rules, having previously been spectacular in point-to-point scene. A mark of 138. He ran very nicely at Perth, I thought, on proper quick summer ground, where he got outpaced turning in and then did stay on very nicely under Ben Bromley, who'll claim 7 here. And if the ground didn't get too quick, and if the ground was on the slower side, particularly from sort of Swinley bottom up, allowing him to latch onto the back, he's got good course form round here. And I thought, again, a slightly bigger price in a race that I didn't have a strong opinion on. 17 to 1, I thought was a fair price to run into the places, or if not a bit better. Ben Bromley's very good for £7. I was surprised he was still claiming 7. And crucially, for a Saturday handicap, he's got plenty of experience. He's been used by some good trainers in some big races. So he's not going to be all at sea, you would hope.
In his pomp, Valtor rated 160, and that was only 2 years ago. He's now down onto a mark of 138. He is 12, age not quite on his side, but they've clearly freshened him up and kept it going. Also owned by Anthony Bromley, Ben's father. So I think it's a nice horse for Ben to make the most of these opportunities. And 17 to 1 currently with SBK is a decent price for a horse that's done bigger things and better things back in the day. I thought that this race, there was a horse in here that has got similar form lines with Bellamy de Picton, and that's Check It Out. Also with a form line with Snow Leopardess, was 16 lengths behind her at Aintree. I thought ran pretty well on heavier ground. Also ran well at Ascot behind Larry. He did jump left, but I think he's learning. He's a younger horse, whereas Valtor is the 12-year-old. I think Check It Out is 7, perhaps. Is much younger. He's still sort of working out how to jump, how to race. I think he's got an improvement in him, and there are a good few of these are exposed. I think Valtor could be one of them. And currently he is 10 to 1. So that's where I'm leaning. And the Twiston Davis team, weekend after weekend, we see Sam riding like a demon possessed, as we've said on this podcast a few times before. So that's James with Sam at 7 to 1, myself with Check It Out at 10s, and Ross getting big prices everywhere with 17 to 1 for Valtor. We'll head to the final race that we're looking at for this weekend, which is the 3:35, the Betfair Exchange Trophy over just shy of 2 miles. This is always a cracking race. We saw Not So Sleepy win last year. Now Grade 1 winner. He just beat Buzz into second. And we've got No Ordinary Joe in this race at 4 to 1. Current favourite, West Cork at 11 to 2 with Samareve. One more for the road at 11s. Big price jump there. Gary Claremont 12s with Benson. Goshen is fascinating here of top weight at 13s. Lateral Lad 13s. Metier and Drutonic 15 to 1. Drop the anchor 17s, and it's bigger prices for the rest of them. But I go back through the years, Ross. We've seen horses like Hunter's Cool, who was only 3rd in the International the other day, run well, win this race. As I said, Not So Sleepy's won this twice in a row. There's usually a horse that's just fringing on handicap to graded company. Is there a horse like this in this race this year?
I think there's probably 3, isn't there, sort of obvious ones: No Ordinary Joe, West Cork, and Samarive. The trick is trying to pick out which one of those is best suited to this test. Samarive was brilliantly impressive at Sandown, but the ground had got soft, and I just wonder whether he's going to be quite as effective now on better ground, up £11. That put me off, and a fairly quick turnaround for just a 4-year-old. And I would be not surprised to see him winning, but I just had a couple of questions about him. I thought the Greatwood form was particularly strong. No Ordinary Joe was very keen throughout the race. I don't imagine it was the plan to get as far forward as they ended up being. And the result of that was that Harry Skelton had a target on No Ordinary Joe up the straight at Cheltenham for West Cork to aim at. And I think that certainly helped. I just wondered whether, with the bit of freshness out of No Ordinary Joe, he's got a £5 pull at the weights. If he could just find a bit more cover and come with a slightly more delayed run, I could see him reversing the form. One More for the Road is very interesting, but when you watch his races, he's been well ridden to dictate off a fairly slow pace and quicken it to his fractions when he wanted. Whether they're going to be able to do the same in a bigger field handicap, I wouldn't be so sure. And then the other two that just were interesting at the start of the week when the ground was soft was Goshen and Landonabo Lad. Landonabo Lad has got good form round Ascot behind My Drogo last year, finishing in front of No Ordinary Joe. And then his run last time at Bangor, you can upgrade. First run back after a wind up. Hunter's Call has gone on to run very well in the International, but I think both of them would have needed the rain to come this week and stay soft. So No Ordinary Joe for me, I thought 4-1 was a fair price to turn the form around with West Cork, who could be subject of the bounce factor. You know, that mammoth effort after a huge layoff, you see it happen. So those were the thoughts, and I thought No Ordinary Joe at 4-1 was a decent price.
James, as Ross was saying, a lot of these horses could be potential much better horses going, sort of making their way through the handicap. And there are plenty of these who haven't had a hard time based on their good last runs. A lot of them coming into this with wins or good seconds under their names, and possibly could be well handicapped, with Goshen sort of making it easier for them with such a big handicap mark.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Ross about One More for the Road. I thought that was a cracking Jack Quinlan front running ride when they let him get away. I can't see it happening again, but that remains to be seen. It's a big Goshen dropping back to 2 miles, and I just felt he might have been a little bit flattered last time, and he's £9 higher than Huntingdon. And also, I think both Ross and SBK market makers have got it right, because No Ordinary Joe, I think he's 4-1, West Cork 11-2. Yes, they were first and third in the Great Win at Cheltenham, but as Ross said, Nico did not want to be making a running, and he basically ran away with him. So the fact he managed to only get beat a couple of lengths, I'd be quite surprised, to be honest, if he didn't reverse the form, especially as he's better off at the weights. But Samarive, I think he looked very good at Sandown. Just a fortnight ago, it may be soon enough, but Paul probably didn't have anything else really to target this race with, and he looks a really progressive handicap hurdler. I'm not too worried about the ground, purely because he bounced off the good ground at Kempton back in April when he won a weak novice, but he won it by 13 lengths and just disappeared in the closing stages. Suggests that a flat track and a quicker surface wouldn't be a problem. He was just a bit too keen at Cheltenham when Lorcan Williams rode him in that conditional jockeys race, and that's a race where trainers always target a well handicapped horse, so they knew what they had at the start of the season. It just didn't quite go to plan when he finished 7th at Cheltenham. So Samarive, he is my one for what's a shame as a smallish field, just a 14 for the Betfair Hurdle, but it's still competitive. And I'll just end it. I'll agree about Landidno Lad. I thought he had a cracking each way chance. Just the ground drying out has got to be a little bit of a negative. I think he might just get a little bit outpaced at a vital stage, but he was one that was overpriced, but you have got 3 head in the market that have got quite solid form. So it might be dominated by those at the top, but Samarive is the one for me.
Landonabo Lad is 19-1. Samarive up £11 for that win at Sandown. That's a big ask for a young horse, 4-year-old with who lacks a lot of big race experience, but interesting cases for all of these horses. I'm going to stick for One More for the Road, despite the guys being completely opposing me and my views for it. So like to see how this race develops. So that's the end of our look at the three main races of the weekend, four main races of the weekend. As always, we always look at our naps. And this is where we were saved last week, and our next best as well. And remember, new SBK customers get their first £40 in bets refunded as cash if they lose. And we were lucky last week, Marco Sky was able to do the business, but there were a couple that just got pipped. So let's hope that we can find some more winners for you again. So I'll head to Ross first for your nap and your next best.
So my nap comes in the 240 from Haydock, the Tommy Whittle Chase. And I'm hoping Remastered will be none the worse for his fairly heavy fall in the Ladbroke at Newbury, where I think he would have gone very close, was travelling well, jumped well up until that point. The one good thing about the fall coming where it did is that his mark has remained unchanged. This softer ground will suit. He was entered at Ascot, but you presume they've come here for the softer ground, maybe a slightly easier race. And I think he is better left-handed. So I thought at 7-2, he was my nap. And then my next best also comes at Haydock in the 3:15, and it's Mr. Harp. He possibly needed his reappearance run, and then ran a decent race next time at Sandown, when fifth on ground that's probably a bit too quick, but he stayed on well up the hill. He's now down £3 to a mark of 120. I think he's better than that, and the softer the ground at Haydock, the better for him, and I thought he'd outrun his odds.
Great, that's 10-1, Mr. Harp. 7-2, Remastered for Ross. And James, your selections, please.
I'm not going to nap Buzz, even though I think you've got a cracking chance this weekend. I'm going to go for Samarive. Honestly, I was really impressed with the Sandown success. Yes, he's gone up £11, but for me, he looked like he could have carried a fair bit more. He's won at Kent on a flatter track, on quicker ground, so the slightly easier conditions shouldn't be a problem. And I just felt he's that real progressive type, and he is at the nap of the weekend. And the other one I'm taking a chance on, Financier. Jumping perhaps not the best, but the fact that Kerry Lee went straight chasing instead of a hurdling campaign suggests that when he gets it right, he could be quite nice in this sphere. And his two wins, especially the Hereford win, he looked pretty good. So he's one that I think will run a cracking race in the 150.
So that's 13-2 for Financier, and as you say, Samarive at 11-2. And for myself, I'm going off to Haydock as well for my nap, looking for a horse which I think has been quite well placed by the Ollie Murphy team. He has that form which links a lot of the horses, links back to Gal Road, which also links to No Ordinary Joe, and that is a horse called Mackleduff, who runs in the 2 mile 3 furlong handicap hurdle. He's 130. The Ollie Murphy team in great form. I think they could probably have gone to probably a more competitive race for than this, but he's on the same mark as he was when he was third at Cheltenham earlier on in the season, on a mark of 122, which is a pretty nice mark. And I think they could have found a good race for him there at Haydock. Outside of that, my next best, I'm going for Check It Out in the Howden Silver Cup at 3:00 at 10-1. I think he's got some form in the book. Does he to jump, which we said about a lot of these horses today, and Ascot is a good jumping test, but I think he's learning and he could get everything into one place for this weekend. So that is it for another weekend of racing, all set for Ascot for Grade 1 action. We hope that we've given you a few insights and some winners for this weekend. Make sure to like, subscribe, and we've got a busy old time coming up with Christmas and plenty of racing happening in between Christmas and New Year. And we'll be back to preview some of the main races as the entries come out for that. So thanks to Ross, thanks to James, and we'll be back again for another SBK betting podcast.